Welcome back to the AI Minds podcast. This is a podcast where we explore the companies of tomorrow being built AI first. I'm your host, Demetrios, and this episode, like every episode, is brought to you by DeepGram, the #1 speech-to-text and text-to-speech, and now voice API on the internet today, trusted by the world's top conversational AI leaders, startups, and enterprises, some of which you may have heard of, like Spotify, Twilio, NASA, and Citibank. I have the pleasure of being joined today by the CTO and co-founder of Elyos AI. Panos, how you doing today, man?
I'm very good, man. And thank you for having me here. Pleasure is all mine.
So I'm excited to chat with you about a little of your journey and then how you went through YC and eventually pivoted and what that took from you to pivot into the space that you're in right now. I know that you saw pain in the market when you eventually landed on what you landed on, which I'm almost like teasing what you landed on right now. But let's just start with how you got into tech.
Oh, that takes us quite back. So I got into tech first time working for a small boutique hotel in Zakynthos. They were looking essentially like to build a new reservation system, and that was back in 2005, 6, right? So very early days where there were no platforms ready to go. I always liked computers. I was into coding at the point, but of course, very like Microsoft oriented at the point, like Visual Basic and stuff. And I started building platform .NET essentially. Was quite interesting, and I was like, that's definitely what I want to do, like for the next few years. Yeah, I went to uni after that, did my bachelor and master's like in computer science, then moved to Amsterdam to do my software engineering degree like over there. And straight after that, started working in Amsterdam and then eventually in London. So like the biggest part of my background is software engineering and building cool things like in different sectors.
So, what gave you the audacity to think that you could build your own company?
I think it was more about having the control of like deciding what the big problem you're solving is, but also like how empowering all that is in terms of like, you work with your team in solving like a very big problem that you can define. You have the opportunity to solve some of the biggest problems out there. And you can move as fast as you can, right? So that's very powerful. And when I realized essentially that, like, hey, we're putting the hours anyway, right? So why don't we go all the way and build, as you said, like something like the best thing of tomorrow? Yeah, let's make it happen.
Hmm. Now, when you first set out on the entrepreneurial journey,
Mhm.
what did you have in mind?
I think I was very excited uh, because sky's the limit in terms of like, hey, we have like a bunch of great ideas. We know how to build because at that point when I decided to start like company, I already had about 10, 15 years like of experience, right? And I knew pretty much like how to build things. What I didn't know, of course, like was, it was with the first company that I was the founder. I had, of course, like fundraised before as part of some of my previous roles, but it's not the same, right? Because essentially, especially when you start like from zero, it's all about the founding team and like identifying like what is the problem that you're solving, how you're gonna solve it, and gaining the trust, of course, both from investors like and the team that you start hiring like to come join you that, right? Because technically you don't have any track record in terms of like everything's pretty new, right? So there was definitely excitement, but it was also the unknown. What I mean by that is I I'm really good at uncertain situations. And what I mean by that is I love figuring things out, and being in a scenario where essentially, okay, you're building something, you don't know what's coming out like in 2 weeks or a month or 5 months, is something I quite enjoy. And that's exactly how the AI space is right now. And that's why I'm very, very excited, like to be building in that space right now.
So what was your first idea?
So we did YC in the summer of 2023, right? So got together with Pip and Adrian in the beginning of 2023, started talking about a bunch of ideas. Pip and I were at that point in the energy space, and we were very excited about the opportunities there, especially around like um, optimizing energy consumption, but also like a lot of the programs that came out later around demand response and the energy flexibility in general. Um, Adrian had also background in energy because he was in the energy practice at BCG like earlier. And we're like, okay, well, let's apply to YC, give like a couple of great ideas like in the application, see how it goes, and we can decide how it goes after that. We definitely wanted to do YC, and that's why we were like, okay, let's go and do it. We heard back beginning of May, so the batch starts in June. So beginning of May, we got an email back to say, hey, we really want to talk to you, and let's jump on a call. Long story short, 24 hours later, we got accepted, and we had
Right.
pretty much like about a month to live our lives. At that point, Pip and I were in London, and Adrian was in Singapore because he's the second time founder, and his previous like company was there. So we all had to move within a month, like San Francisco, which was yeah, it was very intense, right? We made it happen, and I think it was like the best decision of our lives at the point. We go to San Francisco. We spend the summer there. We start building in, as I said, like the energy space. So we framed it as AI agents for commercial and industrial buildings. So trying to optimize their energy consumption patterns and figure out like what are the opportunities for them like to participate in energy flexibility programs. Energy flexibility, if people are not like familiar, is when you actually have all the different assets in your building that can participate in energy programs where you can actually sell energy back to the grid, either by stopping using them for a while, or if you have batteries and other assets, you can actually export energy back to the grid. And yeah, we did YC. We came back at mid-September, essentially 2023. Um, we were already like in the process of building the product, started hiring our first engineers. First Alex joined us, and then Matt. And yeah, for the next year, pretty much, we were building in that direction. As we got to work closer with our customers, right, we realized that most of these customers were very anxious to work on their decarbonization projects, right? Because they all had like targets, some of them even very aggressive targets. But for a lot of different reasons, it seemed that these projects were getting delayed. So we started understanding a bit better what's going on, because of course, for us to be able like to uh, have assets participating in energy flexibility, we needed, let's say, the solar panels to be installed, right?
Yep.
But the real struggle was like that things were really, really slow in the beginning of the project. So before even getting installed or getting plant permissions and all these kind of things. We worked with the customers at the point, trying to understand like what's going on. And what we realized was like a lot of the people involved in the process, because of course, as you have like a big project installing solar panels, let's say, right, you need to have planning permissions, where can you install it like in the building. Here in the UK in particular, it's very specific how you can do it. There are some countries that are a bit more flexible with these types of assets, but here you need to have like a planning permission. You need to work with your insurance company to understand like what the impact is going to be, especially if you're installing batteries. You need to get procurement teams to understand essentially what's the right setup for you. And of course, you need the installers that after they've brought like the panels, they've imported everything, they need to come in and install like in the building. Um, what we realized was like most of these people kind of communicate with phone calls. And that meant that, for example, they had emails, but the lag between like the first email and the next action item was, it could be like from anything from 2 3 days to 2 weeks, depending on their schedule. Because of course, like they're always on the go. A lot of these people have a lot of different projects, so they go physically like to attend these locations, and it can become like complicated.
And
So
when you say, all these people, you're talking about the people that are implementing this for the company, or the people, like, that you hire that are installing the solar panels, or a little
I'll
of
say
both?
all of them, but in particular, the people that we were working closer together, and these were the installers or the maintainers, essentially, like of the buildings, right?
I see.
So we realized very quickly that this is really the blocker for these customers to deliver on these projects, right? And what we did was like, okay, let's get two of these partners, like to understand pretty much what are the problems, right, and what they're trying to do. Of course, the inspiration was like, because I'm talking about pretty much about a year ago. The inspiration was like that voice was becoming a thing, because before summer 2024, things were not there yet. The models were not as conversational. Of course, Deepgram was there, and there were other models as well. But the kind of streaming everything together, right, and building a pipeline was just about becoming like a thing. Um, and what as we started working with, like, with these customers, right, we realized that the biggest burden was like how they run their operations internally, especially when it comes like to their call centers, because the way it works is that they need to have, of course, like agents to receive calls as customers are calling in, right? Both for residential and commercial properties, but also they need to do a lot of outbound calls, like to confirm appointments, like to even order parts, or work together with people like planners. Like, hey, we're doing this big project, right? How are we gonna do it? When we're gonna do it? Do a lot of scheduling, all these kind of things. And we built a prototype within a few weeks, and started testing it out. Of course, very simple version in the beginning, kind of trying to prove as an MVP if it kind of makes sense or not. And we get pretty good success on that, because people realized immediately the value. Especially, you can start, of course, with like, as I said, like not just a simple version, but also kind of trying to get calls that are not, that otherwise they would lose, right? So essentially out of hours or things that they didn't have capacity to handle, right? That was a really good fit for us, right? And we started like straight away. Um, it was really well received. And we started seeing also a network effect, right? Where these business owners, because especially in the trades business, everybody knows everybody.
Yep.
They started kind of recommending us like to other customers, right? Um, and we build the core integrations, because of course a big part of our agents is that they integrate to the major CRMs. So like the agent can actually do end-to-end like bookings, sample payments, be in a position where we can do scheduling, all these major things that they handle over the phone, right?
That's awesome. Is there a
And
is
sorry.
there like an 80/20 of what people are using these phone calls for? Is it mainly scheduling, or is it mainly just confirmation of a scheduled appointment?
Yeah, I would say the vast majority is booking appointments, and the reason is, of course, LLMs are great at providing like context. If somebody calls like for a general inquiry and say, "Hey, do you do this? Do you do that?" How can you help us with that? The, the LLMs are great at that. But the reality is like by the time a customer calls, they're ready to book because
Yeah.
they say, for example, they might not know 100% like what they want to install. For example, if they want to install like a boiler or solar panels or whatever, they know what they want to install, but they might not know which brand, right? So this is something that, of course, the agent can help with, or the essentially the installer, as they go to do like a site visit or the first site visit, they can kind of advise on that, right?
Oh, nice.
So I would say 80% is bookings, and also managing bookings, right? So we have a lot of customers calling back and saying, for example, hey, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it like tomorrow or next week. Can we rearrange that and quickly do it, right? So this is, I would say, like the vast majority of the calls that these people are handling. However, they have a lot of bigger problems internally that they always need to postpone because they need to handle these calls. So one of the big things like that our agents are helping them out with is to spend their time in the more important things in their business, and of course to help them grow their business, right? Because if you have like a lot of inquiries kind of pending, you actually need to spend time to call these guys and understand like what they want, especially for the bigger projects, right? Because you need to do, of course, a lot of scoping, and yeah, we give time back to our customers, and we get them a lot of bookings in.
I love how you talk about the network effect too, because it feels like this is a very underserved market. I don't know anybody who wakes up and thinks, I'm going to go build for the folks that are installing different energy savers or solar panels, for example. But it's got to be a huge market. And it seems like because of that fact that nobody is actually building for this market, or when I say nobody, I imagine you do have competitors and there are folks that are building for it, but it is an underserved market. And because of that, they probably love you. It's like, oh my God, music to my ears.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's definitely underserved, but there is a reason also why it is underserved, right? So a lot of these businesses are very hands-on. What I mean by that is, it's a small team with, let's say, a few people working like in the office, and the founders and the MDs are really hands-on in terms of like the manage like operations on a day-to-day basis. And it requires, of course, like building trust that, the new technology that you're bringing in, especially when it's like so new, then, the things that we couldn't do last year, right? It's going to actually help them deliver on value, right? And the other problem, of course, is like, a lot of these businesses are very, very complicated from an operational point of view. So, what are the customers they're serving? What are the customers they're not serving? How do they serve them? Like, what different areas you can support? So there's a very high level of complexity, that might answer also like your question, why this segment might be underserved, right? Um, it's it's definitely fascinating segment for us, and as we work like really closely with our customers, we see how different their day-to-day operations are becoming, right? Because what we're building is more like an operating system, if you want, like for the new era of AI, not
Nice.
just like an AI agent, right? I mean, an AI agent, you can find it these days like in a lot of different platforms. You can go out there, sign up for one, and have a version of an AI agent like really easily, right? What we do is we try to really understand the operations in each of this business, and find the pain points, right? And say, okay, well, that's how you're going to run your agents. That's where we can bring the biggest value in, and that's how we're going to help you make it happen.
Do you feel like this is something that can be generalized? Like I have a friend who's a dentist and I was talking to him about how he needs to get some agents to at least help relieve the burden of the receptionists because they're working all the time and really hard, specifically around like just seeing, okay, this person's insurance and what they got, does it match? We'll put it into the system and now we have to file the claim and all of that. do you feel like eventually you're gonna get to a point where you can generalize like that, or do you wanna go just super deep on the energy sector and these folks that are installing the solar panels and the
Yeah,
light?
that's a really good question. For now, we want to stay in our vertical. A couple of reasons for that. The models, based on what the technology is today, right? They're doing a fantastic job when you can build something which is really well defined. We have a great understanding of the space as well, like when it comes like to trades and field services, and it also requires a certain level of customer understanding, not just the industry, but also like what are these customers like looking for, right? Um, of course, as the technology evolves and the models becoming better, it's going to be easier to generalize like these technologies. Um, but there is a big element of how can you build a generalized product that can give like 100% like to all the different sectors, right? Is it
Yeah.
really easy to do? Because you also see it with CRMs, right? A lot of CRMs, technically, they're a piece of software that you could generalize, but you're going to see always that they stay like in specific sectors, right? You have, of course, like the Salesforces and SAS and all this kind of bigger CRMs, but you'll see that the more technical CRMs, they kind of focus on, for example, trades, as you say, like healthcare, marketing, and et cetera, et cetera. So they're the experts over there, right? And we are really well positioned, like in what we do. So I don't say no, but the priority is going to be like staying where we are. Yeah.
Talk me through the onboarding
hmm
of the customer. How does it look when I engage with you? Do I have to give you all my emails and everything that I've ever created so that you can then figure out where you can add the most value?
Yeah. We start with recordings. So like previous calls, right? I mean, a big element to build great agents is to understand over the past few months, like how have you handled like your calls, right? And this is a very interesting point that we see with a lot of customers is that um, having baselines, kind of, for example, what's the percentage of queries that were resolved like straight away, right? How many calls, how many times did a customer need to call to do X, Y, Z. This is data that, of course, like bigger companies might have as part of their call center operations. But a lot of the customers, that are their teams, less than 1,000 people, let's say, they might not necessarily have that in place, right? So, as part of our onboarding, we get to a point where we can actually work with them on getting these benchmarks in, because then it's much easier for us also like to score the performance of our
Yeah.
agents. So and compare like with an actual agent. We spend some time with them understanding, of course, like their business, because for us, this is the most important thing, right? It's not just saying, okay, well, this is your agent, take it, like, and
Have
do
fun.
whatever you want, right? But it's more like to understand like how the business works, like how can we help them as well, like either streamline some of the processes they might have, or even do things a bit differently, right? Especially when you see like so many customers, you can help them like massively say, hey, why don't you do this on this way? And of course, the last bit is like the knowledge base that we ask from them. So essentially, tell us a bit more about your company, right? Give us as much information you have. A lot of these customers also have internal processes. So, for example, if someone calls in and wants to get like a boiler installed, like that's the process. And these are just some of the materials we're using, like to um, pretty much like build the agents, right? Starting from prompting, building evals. We have evals like per customer for a lot of the things, because we want to make sure that it works like for their business cases. Um, and of course, a lot of other things like, okay, what's the best voice that would work for their agents? Based on previous calls, we can understand as well a lot around general sentiments and which agents have performed, call agents have performed a bit better, right? So we can use like this sample essentially like to with a high weight, like just to make sure that our agents are going to be more like simulating like this behavior, right?